Hello, folks. How are we going? Just doing a test.
Ready? You got everything on?
No, it hasn't been on. Live, yep. Today we're judging the 2019 AIPP Epson Victorian Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards Travel category, sponsored by Camera Electronic. My name is Rob Anderson and I'll be your panel chair for this session. Bill Buckman is our scribe, and thank you to our crew of print handlers. Our judging panel currently consists of Paul Holan in judge number 1, number 2, James Harvey, number 3, Vicky Moritz, number 4, Steve Scalone, and number 5, Alan Moyle. Sorry, Steve, can we get you to swap over for another judge? Sorry to disappoint you. Travel photography involves landscape, people, culture, customs, and history. It may express or reference the feeling of a time and place, or simply portray a land and its people in its natural state. All destinations will be considered in the light of being travel photography, even if the location in the photograph is the same as where the print judging is being held. Entries should communicate some aspect of travel, but judges are asked to interpret this broadly. Entries into this category may be commissioned or self-commissioned. This category is for single capture images only and is intended to reward technical and creative excellence in photographing and presenting an authentic representation of a scene without the benefit of creative compositing techniques. There should be no attempt to misrepresent reality by manipulating the image's content, context, or meaning. Cropping the image and perspective correction are permitted. In-camera multiple exposures and panoramic stitching are prohibited. Polytics, diptychs, triptychs are permitted. So if we'd like to go through the judges, we have now Paul Holan, James Harvey, Vicky Moritz, Ian Vanderwald and Alan Moyle. If we could have the first print, please. Sorry, do you want me to do that? That's it. Good to go. If you want to enter your scores, please, judges. This is the travel category sponsored by Camera Electronic. Have an average score of 78. If we'd like to go to judge number 4, Ian Vanderwald.
Put this in the silver range. I'm quite enjoying this image. I like how we've got all these little windows. Hello.
Yep, you're on.
It's too loud now. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this image. I like all the little snippets through the little windows. Considering it's one scene, single capture, I'm really enjoying the fact that we're getting all these little scenes within the windows and how those windows are all sort of pointing to that central window and bringing us into the centre. I put it in the silver mark and I'm quite happy with that score and I think it's a lovely image.
We'll accept our average score of 78. Next print, please. Just reminding everybody that this is a single capture category, so only single capture images. Judges, can we have all your scores, please? Vicky and Paul, have you entered your score? Um, uh, we got an average score of 86. Judge number 4, Ian, if you'd like to talk to us about this print. What's your comment about this image?
I really enjoy this print. I actually see some humour in it. We've got this. First of all, the print quality. I'm really enjoying the tonality through it, the detail in the shadows, the sense of light in the image, the light in the buildings behind. But it's sort of, you know, here's a photographer in a tourist location, and he's out the back of obviously some tourist attraction or site, because everyone's up on the hill looking over the hill, and he's chosen to go behind and photograph them. I really like that little bit of humour in the image. I think it's a nice travel image.
Okay, if we can have a comment from Vicky, please. You're at the other end of the range of 81.
Yep. I enjoyed the sense of space and the fact that it's somewhere out with the mountain, beautiful folds of the mountains and things. I just couldn't bring it up any further. I love the detail in the middle of the image with the light on the hill, but and I guess the foreground is kind of grounds it, but I just felt it was a tiny bit muddy. But I take your point about the people and the humour behind the presentation.
Thank you, Vicky. We had scoring range from 81 to 86. The average for that print was 83. If we could have the next print, please. That was silver award. Scores, please, judges. The print has an average score of 77. If we could ask Paul to have a comment on this print.
Yeah, I just noticed into the silver range. I really enjoy the delicacy of the characteristics going on through the characters of the bus. It speaks a lot about the culture and the individuals as well. I probably would have gone higher if there was a different maybe time of day and different more separation between the front and the back. The tonality of the bus kind of just merges into the background a little bit purely through colour, but it's well timed and well seen. There's an interesting design and some lovely graphic lines in the foreground and bringing through the print. Well done.
Thank you, Paul. We'll accept that average score of 77. Next print, please. Did it work or not? Again, if you'd like to enter your scores, please, judges. Ian, have you entered your score? It's right. Okay, we have an average score of 78. With would anyone like to challenge that? Okay, we've got Vicky sitting at 84, and we got scores from 74 to 84. Vicky, please.
So, silver. I thought that it met the criteria for high levels of communication, craft and skill, because what we see in here is a beautiful travel landscape. I think what drew me in was, in terms of travel, was the road with a tiny little car on it on the right-hand side, which kind of provided us a point like the cookie, I guess we talk about. And it's beautifully captured in terms of the tonal range and also the clarity of the image and the print itself is very well done. So I encourage people to come up to silver.
At the other end of the range, we have James at 77.
Look, I do agree with Vicky, and I really wanted to bring this image up higher, but the things that are holding me back, and I think for the photographer, if this can help them a bit, I find the foreground, I think if it was cropped a little bit higher to more or less use the road to really draw us in, because I want to go on a journey. And even if you, I don't know if there was a horse or something like that, and I think that the car, for me, it looks like a tree. That's just my opinion.
Okay, judges, everyone except Vicky, if you like to rescore this print. Vicky's, sorry, write a reply, Vicky.
I understand where you're coming from. I guess in terms of the foreground, I thought that actually gave some further context to the type of country that we're talking about, and that kind of added to the travel criteria for me. So, yeah, beautiful tones. Please consider coming up.
Okay, judges, Vicky, hold your score at 84. The rest of you rescore, please. It's now sitting on 78. Okay, with that challenge, it's moved to an average of 80 with a majority 79. No, stays at 79. Is that right? Yep. It's gone from 78 to 79. Okay, thank you. We have the next print, please. Reminding you, this category can be commissioned or self-commissioned photographs. Judges, if we could have your scores, please. Just be 1 minute. Okay, we have scores, average score of 80, scores ranging from 75 to 83. Would anyone, so look, we have James, if you'd like to speak to the print. You scored at 83.
Yeah, look, I did give it a good score, and I wanted to get into the 83 range to make sure that it was, worthy of a silver award. I love the character portrayed in the image. I love the detail of the lines and the grittiness on the the chap riding the bike, and the hardship of the rubbish that he's transporting. And I think it all sort of really represents the whole environment, and I think that's a compliment to the photographer. So well done.
Okay, thank you, James. We'll accept that. That's a silver award print, 80 points. Can we have the next print, please? We're now judging the travel category, sponsored by Camera Electronic. Judges, sorry, it's a little bit slow to enter for this end. We have possible challenges. That scores an average of 81, with scores ranging from 76 to 86 points. Alan, would like to challenge?
Yeah, really fantastic in terms of that colour sort of pop and the dimensions that you get through the windows and all the shapes that are coming through. So that again, having that lady there looking up, that's just absolutely exquisite how it all kind of is just flowing together. So it's extremely well seen for a travel shot that, can't have, it has to be a found image. This is extremely well done.
The other end of the scale, we've got James Harvey on 76. Would you like to make any comments about, respond to Alan's comments, please?
Look, I appreciate, I guess, Alan's comments about the lady in the window. I really wanted to get up and have a good look about, what was going on in that window, and I kind of wanted a bit more of a story. And I also find maybe this would work better if it was even monotone. I find the colours a little bit just overpowering, and I'm kind of looking for a little bit more in the image than what I'm seeing, so that's why I scored it a little bit lower.
Paul, could you make a quick comment, please?
Yeah, I'm on 84, very happy and comfortable to be in high silver. I feel like there's a beautiful design you can sit with on its own, and a lovely reward you come closer. I love the vulnerability and honesty and intimacy of that moment that you've seen through there. I really feel almost like I shouldn't be looking at it. She looks like she's in a dressing gown or just come out of the shower, and there's a privacy there that I feel almost like difficult to engage with because like I shouldn't really be looking at this. And it's very powerful and it's beautifully seen, and I don't think it'd be easy to find a moment like that so perfectly.
Thank you, Paul. Can we have a right of reply from James briefly, please? Sorry, Alan. Distracted by the chips.
There are chips. So yeah, again, in terms of how this has been photographed, keeping all your verticals vertical, it's been corrected perfectly or photographed perfectly. I love how you also how it's, you know, in the terms of thirds, you've got the grey and the blue, and also how that blue is also referenced in the curtains on the grey side. So I feel the moment is perfectly captured, the three little elements of all the three windows that are open, so there are actually three open windows. And yeah, so I believe this is up into that silver distinction range. Thanks.
Alan, if you'd like to hold your score, please, and the rest of the judges, please rescore. It's currently sitting at 81. Judges, if you rescored, please. Have you rescored that print? Still waiting for that score. Yep, James. Okay, thank you, James. That score has meant it's come up 3 points from 81 to 84 points. Thank you for the challenge, Alan. We have the next print, please. And Alan, if you'd like to change over for another judge, with Fiona, if you could come on, please. And if we could have, say, Ian to stand down for Steve Scalone, please. Next print, please. Just reminding everybody that in the travel category, cropping and image perspective correction are permitted, but in-camera multiple exposures and panoramic stitching are prohibited. Can we have scores from James and Paul? Sorry. Okay, thank you, judges. That average score is an 80. If Vicky would like to make a comment on this, you're sitting at a score of 83, 3 above the average.
I swallowed very quickly. I love this image. I love the humour in it. I mean, how often do you see the back end of a dog? And the other thing I really enjoyed about it was the juxtaposition of the natural element of the dog sort of trotting through this concrete jungle. The only reason I didn't go a little bit higher was I thought the dog was just a little bit soft, so the actual quality of the capture could have been just that much better, but it was a lovely, lovely capture.
That scores 80, a silver award. Thank you. Can we have the next print, please? You can have the scores, please, judges. Okay, we have an average score of 81 with a range of 76 to 86, with Vicky sitting on 86 points. If you'd like to, you want to challenge?
For me, this was all about the story. So here we have the context of the desert, and it looked like an older person maybe talking to the younger fellow, instructing him. So I think the story there, and then in the background, of course, there's the little hut, which sort of shows how severe this environment is. So for me, it was all about the story. I thought the placement of the elements within the frame was really well done, and the print itself was quite good. But it was the story that got me to a higher level.
And sitting at the other end of the scoring range is Steve Scalone, sitting on 76 points.
Yes, I feel perhaps that the decisive moment wasn't quite there. There is obviously a story or a narrative happening, but perhaps the photographer didn't quite get that decisive moment. The thing that I found most distracting is the perhaps over-processed skin tones and the highly vibrant, over-sharpened post-production that is presented here as well. I scored it at professional practice, and yeah, I'm still listening though. I want to hear a little bit more, if I could.
Okay, if we have a right of reply from... Oh, sorry, we're going to get Paul to have a word about this.
I'm on 84 and I'm considering coming up. Steve, I feel like that just adds a dimensionality to it that makes them really stand forward against the banality of the background and the starkness of it, which is very non-dimensional and quite flat. And that brings them really forward. And I feel like it does speak really beautifully to a sense of a rite of passage or maybe a young boy going on his first journey on his own, and a motive that can really brings me in there. And that choice of timing of the day speaks a lot to the harshness of that landscape and the heat that they're going to be dealing with quite well. I'm considering coming up and joining you.
Thank you, Paul. Vicky, if you have a right of reply, please, sitting on 86 points.
I think you put that beautifully. And in terms of a travel image, I don't think it's overcooked. In terms of processing, I think the vibrancy, I would say the blue bridle, etc. I think it actually works very well, as you said, against the bland and harsh background. So the story gets me there. So please come and join me.
Thank you, Vicky. If you'd like to hold your score at 86, and the rest of the judges, please rescore, please. It's currently sitting on 81. Thank you, judges. Your challenge, Vicky, has brought the score up to silver with distinction, 85 points. Thank you. Next print, please. Please, judges. That's, thank you, judges. That scores an average of 81 points. Can we ask Steve if you'd like to talk to this print, please, on 83 points?
The colour is a real, does actually show quite a lot of impact with this image, as well as the compositional element of symmetry, balance, and that type of thing. I guess in order for the image to go even higher, perhaps it needed maybe that human element in travel or something like that that lended itself to a little bit more of a narrative.
Thank you, Steve. We'll accept that score, an average of 81. It's a silver award. Thank you. Okay, James, would you like to swap over with Ian Vanderwall, please? Next print, please. Okay, we have an average score of 77, with scores ranging from 74 to 81. If you'd like to talk to this print, please, Steve.
Enjoying the composition, however, and it's very deliberate to what the photographer saw is what is presented. There's a beautiful little rhino or something in the water, which is great. I think if this image was to go higher, perhaps a more distinct level of cropping, perhaps even an angle that helped with the such frontal lighting, but really enjoyed the actual mimic of the shadow. It tended to work.
Thank you, Steve. We'll accept that score of 77. Can I have the next print, please? You want to take them? We're now judging the travel category in the the Epson Victorian Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards, sponsored by Camera Electronic. Thank you, judges. We have an average score of 78, with scores ranging from 76 to 82. If we could have Paul, if you'd like, you're sitting on 82. Can you offer advice to the photographer?
I chose to excuse some of the technical elements. I feel like the foreground was a little bit unsharp, but I just feel like the characterization, the balance of colour left to right, the depth of the image, the detail in the background you can really enjoy and work through and place yourself in, and the lighting sort of coming in and the more garish sort of elements. It added a great kind of story and realism to it that really brought me into the image. But it does have a few technical flaws that would be difficult to fix, I think, in terms of that sharpness, and a grittiness to it, which I think works.
Does anyone else want to offer some advice?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great scene. I just think it's an opportunity missed. If there was, some engagement between the butcher and the photographer or something, or even some expression of her, like chopping up the meat or whatever, because it's a very, very unique scene. It's unlike any butcher shop you'd find in Australia, and I think that is its strength. But as an award image that's over professional practice, I'd just like to see a little bit more in the narrative.
Okay, thank you, Ian. We'll accept that score of 78. And next print, please. Okay, we're judging the travel photography category. It involves landscape, people, culture, customs and history. It may express or reference the feeling of a time and place, or simply portray land and its people in its natural state. Entry should communicate some aspect of travel, but our judges are asked to interpret this boldly. You have the scores, please, judges. Scores, please. Fiona and Steve, are you? Vicky, have you scored? You have. Sorry. We have scores ranging from 78 to 88. And my maths is not that fast to actually manually do it in my head, but I'm just waiting for the computer. Okay, does anyone like to challenge that? We've got an average score of 83 and we've got scores from 78 to 88. And Paul, you can challenge you have an challenge at 88.
Up. Wow, I feel like the central figure is coming out of a New York runway or a transvestite party in underground LA with professional rim lighting in this incredible scene of around it, that with the detail and the narrative and the characters and the animals, and just beautifully, delicately enhanced all the way through. The print quality of this is absolutely magical. And the choice of lighting, the way it shapes and gives dimensionality to every single structure in this image is beautiful. And what a striking figure. And the characterization of this is so sort of unexpected and almost like cross-cultural. It speaks a lot both of the culture that it's in and the influence of culture from outside at the same time. Let's get moving on this, people.
Okay, at the other end of the scale, we've got Fiona Hanbury on 78. If you could make your comments brief, please, judges, because we've got some real interest in this print.
Yeah, so I put this in professional practice and I felt it sat there comfortably. The introduced light with the flash off to the left has created some shadows that distracted me in the background. I found the vignetting quite heavy on the left, which kept drawing me away from the figure, and I really wanted to pay attention to the face. I mean, you can't miss the outfit, but there were a couple of little technical issues in there that kept me out of award range, but I'm appreciating what you're saying by the run walk, or the, yeah.
Way.
Yeah, the runway. Yeah, so I did really appreciate that.
And Fiona, if you want to hand it to Steve, he would like to make a comment as well. Briefly, please, Steve.
Very briefly. Paul, I'm totally with you in so many regards. The technical printing and that type of thing, I gave it a good solid silver. I feel in order for me to even go up into the silver distinction, the sharpening needed to be less. The actual vignetting, there is some kind of banding that's now happening in the sky in the top right, just a smidge, but it's a print competition, so there's that element too to think about.
Very briefly, Ian, if you'd like to talk to this print, you were scored at 86, above the average of 83.
Yeah, no, I think it's a solid silver distinction. I just love the narrative in this, and it's. Yes, there are some technical flaws. I don't see them as badly as other people do. I feel, if his travel is possibly shooting in JPEG, which may be a cause for very, very minimal banding at that, if at all. All right, it's very, very subtle. What I see here is a very, very, very strong narrative. Here we are in this poverty-stricken part of Africa, I'm assuming, and there's still a social pecking order. And here are these kids that have basically nothing, and here's this guy adorning himself with this bright clothing and jewellery and hat and rising above it, and he's really working up that social pecking order, and there he is in all his glory, and these two little kids with nothing and their cows and their humpy houses behind. I think it says a beautiful story. I think it's really well seen and really well captured, and I think it's a solid silver distinction, guys. Come on.
Thank you, judges. Paul, very briefly, please. Can we have...
Patient. There we go. So I feel like up in the top right corner, Steve, I actually just thought that was a cloud. I thought it was just separation of a layer. Like it easily could be. I don't necessarily feel like that's a flaw in banding. I can't see any evidence of that throughout the frame. I kind of feel like that extra bit of vignetting in the corner sort of nudges you back in where you want to be. Like otherwise I'd wash out that corner a little bit. So it doesn't actually disengage me at all. Actually, it just nudges me back in where I feel like the interest is and should be, and it actually takes me away from that negative space on the bottom left, which isn't adding anything, which is where I don't want to be. But I just can't get past the absolute convincing characterization that I've never seen anything like, and it's so convincing. This guy is so present with where he's at, and it's so distinctive in that context that it's it's astonishing. And I'm not sure what other technical elements you're talking about to the image. I think the sharpening is absolutely perfect. I couldn't find anything overdone, and I felt the delicacy of it all the way through, front to back, is quite amazing, actually, for that sort of level of depth. But narrative alone easily brings me into distinction. We only need one of you guys to come join us, so please do.
Thank you, Paul. You're sitting on an 88, and you've asked the rest of the judges to rescore. Currently sitting on 83. Paul's challenge has brought the average score up to 87, a silverwood distinction. Congratulations. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Okay, the score, print scores an average of 87 points, with a challenge from Paul sitting on 92 points.
Deep breath. Wow. I mean, there's nothing that's not masterful about the way this is presented to us. The tightness of the framing, the beautiful diagonals that these gorgeous shadows bring in, the detail and finesse in every single part of the image, the pop of color. But what I particularly love is what it speaks about humanity, the way we sit in spaces on our own, the way we walk together, the way we interact, the body language with how we present ourselves to each other. And there's two sort of observing figures on the top right. There's one that's actually looking at the photographer, what I can tell, that really stands out and brings it up. And there's someone taking a picture of the picture as well in there, which sort of adds this other sort of element to it. And I feel like I can walk around this and engage with it on so many different levels, structurally and color-wise and narrative-wise. It's just no shortage. And I'm beautifully dancing around everywhere. Let's have a good chat about this. Gold.
Thank you, Paul. Fiona, if you'd like to comment on this photograph sitting on 85 points.
Certainly enjoyed the creative aspect with the colour tones and the narratives. I really enjoyed, particularly the guy that was actually looking up at the camera, not to mention the guy who is left with a camera. So I did enjoy those features, but I've seen images of this context before where we're watching people from above, so I didn't feel that it added any originality to the position or to the narrative. Having said that, I am still listening, and I think Silver Distinction was a very comfortable place for me to sit, but keep talking.
Okay, James, would you like to comment? You're sitting on 87.
Yeah, look,
on
I'm
the
sitting on.
average.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sitting on 87, and the more I look at this image, I love the story. You think about it, guys. We've got graphically, the composition is gorgeous. We've actually got all these little, I guess, squares, and usually you want all the squares uniform, but they're not uniform. And for the photographer to be able to make this work with the balance of the people on the right and the girl or the guy with the camera, there's the travel element. The lovely orange works well with the soft grey, and I'm definitely going to go up into the gold area. So well done to the photographer.
Okay, thank you, James. We've got an average score of 87, challenge from Paul on 92. Please rescore other four judges. Sorry, right or reply.
2 words. Gold, please.
Okay, thank you, Paul. That's brought the score up to 92. Gold. Ian, if you'd like to change with Alan Moyle, please. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Okay, we've got an average score of 81, ranging from 78 to 83. Steve, if you'd like to talk to the print.
Enjoying the grittiness of what the photographer did to the image. I'm also the actual decisive moment of that person walking on the rooftop is a nice touch. In order for it to perhaps go even higher than the good solid silver that it did get, perhaps a rethink into cropping or perhaps reducing some of the distracting elements, which is where that story actually lies.
Thank you, Steve. We'll accept that for an average of 81, a silver award. Next print, please. Alan, if you'll swap in. Scores, please, judges. We're just trying to catch up a bit of time here. Average score of 75, ranging from 72 to 81. We have a challenge from Vicky sitting on 81.
Okay. I really enjoyed some of the textures and tones in this image. There were things that didn't please me in terms of perhaps too much foreground, but I thought in terms of the interest and being the travel category, with the 5 huts and the level of detail around the front of the little twigs and things in front. And then there's the extra element of the road. I thought, do we need the road? Then I thought, yeah, that's all about the story. How are you going to get to this place? So terrific detail around the back, particularly of the huts, and the huts just gave us an anchor. So I would ask people to think about a silver.
Okay, Vicky will hold a score. Can the rest of the... Oh, Alan, do you want to talk to this print sitting at 72?
There's just way too much foreground in this that doesn't need to be there. If you cropped all that off, then you get a semi-interesting image, and then also the trees. I think that's where you find the image is lying in the trees. There's amazing texture up in the trees, but we're cutting it off. So I believe there's a good image in there, but I still don't think it's up at that award range.
Thank you, Alan. Vicky, if you can hold your score at 81. The rest of you, please rescore. Sorry? We will next time. Okay, that averages 75. Next print, please. We have your scores now, please, judges. Paul and James, your scores, please. Okay, we have an average score of 80. Can we have Vicky to comment, please, sitting on 82?
I thought as a sort of a travel outback type image, it was really, really well presented. The car right in the centre there with the road diagonally across the centre of the frame sort of adds some tension that I really enjoyed. So maybe crop out a little bit on the bottom to make it slightly stronger, but I think it was beautifully printed and well deserving of a silver.
Thank you, Vicky. We'll accept that. That's a silver award, sitting on 80 points. Vicky, if you could change with Fiona, please. Next print, please. We have your scores now, please, judges. We have an average score of 78, and we have Steve, an elective challenge, sitting on 84.
Yeah, ask my fellow judges to delve into those deep, crisp waters, to have another look. This is single capture. This is one-time, decisive moment, and the photographers actually managed to capture something somewhat completely abstract. Sure, there's excuse me. Sure, nothing in the actual image is perfect, but then what is? The umbrellas perhaps aren't in the right spot, so on and so forth, but that's why I didn't give it a score that's even higher. The actual exposure and the composition of this beautiful hut, whether it be in a resort or someplace elsewhere, really does lend itself to a little bit of motion and movement, which is actually created in camera.
Thank you, judges. That sits on 84 points. Next print, please. Sorry, 70. Sorry. My apologies. Can we have a Paul to have a word about this print sitting on 78?
I'm on 78, and part of me was looking for a fish or a woman or some sort of character of a person involved. It felt a bit more like a commercial image than a travel one, in that it's very much about the structure of the place and potentially the business as opposed to the experience of travel, as much as I feel like I'm taken there. And again, you know, that deliberate choice around the placement of angle around the umbrellas and different things is you know, it was their choice to make in that moment. Colour palette is really gorgeous. I don't know if I would choose a different time of day to add a little bit more romance to the top, but it's still beautifully captured exposure-wise. I'm still listening.
Okay. Yeah, Fiona, if you like to, you're sitting on 78 as well.
Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic professional practice, although I really wanted to relax into the image and I found the composition too tight on either side of the hut to do that. I found it just created a little bit of discord and I really wanted to relax into it. And likewise, I was looking for the mermaid at the bottom of the ocean, or a purpose for having that in the image.
You do realise that mermaids don't exist yet.
Right
Yeah,
replay
it is my
from
right
Steve.
So yeah, but granted, I do feel that it is missing some element, which is why I didn't go even higher. I do feel that we do need to award the photographer for use of camera craft in order to create a different perspective of reality.
Thank you, Steve. If you hold your score at 84, other four judges, please rescore. It's sitting at 78. And your challenge has brought this average score up to 80, a silver award. Thank you, Steve. Next print, please. Okay, the scores now, please, judges. James? Yep. Thank you, judges. That scores an average of 79. Paul is sitting on 87 with an elective challenge.
Tiger. Where I feel this image is really superior is it's compositionally superb. I can walk down every single detail like a Jack and the Beanstalk on the right-hand side. I can follow the water flow down on the right-hand side. I can follow the sweeping curves on the upper left image down to the image. And there's this gorgeous reward of people in a lovely bouncing angular geometry. I can just dance around like a pinball machine down the bottom, enjoy all the detail. The time of day is perfect, and the lighting is subtle but very, very elegant. And the detail in this print is unbelievable. Love to bring this into the awards range.
Thank you, Paul. The other end of the scale, we've got Alan sitting on 73 points.
I agree with you, Paul, in terms of the composition leading us all into there, but there's just the highest, brightest value of this image is the flower, the red flower in the bottom corner, and then you have the other flowers that are cut off at the bottom. And so that's where you kind of get stuck. But then if you do progress through it, if you push through and get to there, there's just not anything really happening with those people. They're just there. They're very static. There's not... I want to come down to a really cool, interesting point of interest, but it's just not there. I agree, beautiful print, but it just hasn't brought it all together to a really great crescendo. There's my happy word.
Thank you, Alan. James, you wanted to have the last word on this one before Rod reply?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Alan. I mean, I love. Paul as well, because I love the detail and coming down and the flow and the colours, and it's all very beautiful. But what I'm finding quite distracting is the background, all those buildings and the highlights. And when we look at an image, generally our eyes are drawn towards the lighter part of the image, and I just can't get away from those elements in the background, which are distracting, not adding to the image. So maybe a tighter crop, I don't know.
Thank you, James. Rod, a reply from Paul on 87. Yes, Fiona, if you briefly, please.
Yeah, I totally went down the rabbit hole with you, Paul. I was down, intrigued in there, and everybody with their selfie sticks were talking about the human interaction. The number of selfie sticks just means that they were so captivated by the environment that they wanted, photos themselves of being in that environment. I do see what you say about the red flower, but I'm not distracted by that because I'm too busy ducking down the rabbit hole.
Right, a reply from Paul, please.
Yeah, I think the incredible sophistication of that viewpoint and using both organic and organic material to shape and direct us where it wants to go. And the print quality alone is quite masterful in that choice of day. In terms of the framing, I think if you cut down the top, you'd lose that sweeping depth that brings you down to the bottom of the frame, and you couldn't shoot it any other time of day. If it's any brighter than that, it just wouldn't even be able to see any detail at all in the background. But you can if you choose to look through the back there. It's only 1 point up to award range, folks.
Okay, Paul holds the score at 87. Other four judges rescore, please. Steve, have you entered? And it comes up to an average score of 80, a silver award. Next print, please. Reminding you we're judging the travel category of the 2019 AIPP Epson Victorian Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards, sponsored by Camera Electronic. James, have you got a score, please? Thank you, judges. The average score is 74. We have a challenge from James Harvey on 82.
Okay, look, I don't know whether you guys are bringing the image down due to some probably technicalities. Sitting back here, I can see a little bit of a halo around the tree, but I'm supposed to be talking you guys up into silver. The reason I've scored it silver is I do really like the composition. I love all the little detail, the stories that are happening, the softness of those colours used, the detail on the trees, and I find it quite a calming image, and I think the photographer deserves a silver, and I think you guys should appreciate those things. Sure, the halo around the trees for me is a bit of a flaw, but I don't think that overpowers the other components that are bringing it up for me.
Thank you, James. Right, a reply. Steve would like to make a comment.
Sorry, Bill. Thanks. I do understand where you're coming from. I think it's a beautiful scene. And I actually feel that the photographer, when taking it, saw all those wonderful elements. I feel where perhaps the photographer needs to concentrate perhaps a little bit more on is the subtlety of post-production in RAW converters or Photoshop and things like that, just to bring out the colours a little bit more gently. The haloing doesn't actually happen like that in real life. So perhaps the white sky should perhaps appear white sky, things like that. I feel it's approaching professional practice. The scene there is great. I just feel perhaps reworking the image could improve it.
Briefly, Fiona.
I just feel there's a conflict between the implied softness in lighting with the overcast sky and the brightness of the colours. It's a real contradiction for me, and of course the other technical flaws that have already been pointed out.
Thank you, Fiona. We have a right reply from James. You're sitting on 82. The average score is 74.
Look, I'm not asking for a lot, and look, I do agree with you, Steve, totally, that there are flaws that this photographer can work on for entering it into APA and perhaps bringing down those colours, but I still think that the image warrants the beauty of the detail and the lovely boat and the way your eyes can just run along the buildings there and all the little elements, and I think they give it a really nice, quirky, it's quite a nice relaxing image, and yes, there are things that could bring it up high, so yeah, I'm asking for you guys to rescore.
Thank you, James. Your score is 82. The average score is 74. Other judges, rescore, please. And it's brought up 1 point to 75. Can we have the next print, please? Just reminding everyone that this is a category that can be commissioned or self-commissioned. It's for single capture images intended to reward technical and creative excellence in photographing and presenting an authentic representation of a scene without the benefit of creative compositing techniques. Sorry. Scores, please, judges. We have an average score of 75. Who would like to give some advice to the photographer?
Yep. I'm enjoying the candy cane boom gate. However, the distractions around the actual building are just pulling my eye away from the rest of the composition. So perhaps in order to improve this image is to perhaps even a tighter crop.
Thank you, judges. That's 75. Next print, please. Next print, please. reminding you that cropping and the image and perspective correction are permitted in the travel category, which is single capture category. In-camera multiple exposures and panoramic stitching are prohibited. The travel category is sponsored by Camera Electronic. Can we have your scores, please, judges? Thank you, judges. We have an average score of 82, with scores ranging from 78 to 88, and a challenge from Paul Holland.
Wow, such exquisite emotive qualities to this image. There's a wonderful grace in the way these two figures are almost like standing side by side together, just embracing the breadth of what they're leaning into, and such delicate, soft, beautiful layers, but with a real actual solid presence as well in the background. It speaks of a broad landscape, it speaks of reflection, it speaks of presence. It has a strong graphic component to it, and it's got a lot of breathing room, and it just has a beautiful grace to it. I'm strongly in silver distinction.
Steve, if you'd like to, you scored at 81.
Yes, and I so would have been up there with you. I promise I would have been. It breaks my heart. There's serious technical flaws, unfortunately. The emotive nature of this complete image, the layers, this sort of image does actually induce other senses like sound and smells and that type of thing, but I cannot forgive, unfortunately, in a print competition, the massive amounts of banding that's happening in the top. And so I gave it a good silver, but unfortunately I can't go higher for that.
Thank you, Steve. Fiona, would you like to comment, please, just before you stand up? You scored at 78.
I wanted to be in this experience. I wanted to be surrounded by that beautiful tonality. I just felt that freeness that I would have felt is very much weighted by the top side of the print. That heavy vignetting at the top is really oppressive, and I'd like to see the photographer reconsider that for APA.
Thank you, Fiona. Can I have a right reply from Paul, please, sitting on 88?
Oh, sorry, you're going to speak now? Yeah, I feel like that there's a natural weighting and balance between the heaviness and the darkness at the bottom and the top that brings you back in the frame. So I'm not washed out. I'm just nudged back into the frame, which I really like, and it helps me move and bounce around the frame. I didn't see the vignetting, but I'm not going to deny that I've gone up there that it actually is there, and that is something, if you're going to take it towards the APA, I would really encourage you to work on. It could be interesting to try a few different papers as well, maybe go from more delicate, softer, more matte paper to bring that. But I still can't get past, and I still really clearly... its communication is fantastic and it's superb and it's undeniable, I think, in terms of its presence, its emotive qualities, its grace, its sense of space, and this wonderful character of these two figures standing together, both organic and inorganic, you know, like a human in nature, just present and witnessing. Just superb. See if you can nudge up a few points, folks.
Okay, Paul Holland, if you can sit on 88 points, and the other four judges, please score. Has been an average of 82 and is, if you enter please, it's gone up 1 point to an average of 83 points, a silver award. Next print please. Can we have your scores, please, judges? Thank you, judges. We have an average of 87 with scores ranging from 82 to 92. We have a challenge from Steve Scalone, please. He's got scoring on 93 with an elective challenge.
So this is the epitome. This is the description of travel. I can feel that it's hot, it's dusty. There's 3 amazing palm trees that feel like they've just been placed there in amidst of this block of units, which has so many little stories that are going through all of it. There is not one part of this image that the photographer has deliberately hidden from us, or the most distracting things that the photographer has hidden from us are not there, which is amazing. So the cropping is just so on point. And I could feel that the photographer has seen the beautiful balance of those 3 palm trees, even that pole that's there, and then leading on with those 2 banks of chairs. Then you get this amazing figure who's literally living in primary colours. And the whole mass of travel cases. It's just beautifully seen, beautifully crafted, exceptionally printed. It's amazingly awesome.
Thank you, Steve. Can we have an equally awesome comment from James, please, sitting on 82 points?
Oh, geez, I'm down on the low end. Look, I'm really agreeing with you now, Steve. The second time I went up and looked at this image, I thought, hey, look at the subject. She's got red hair. There's the red bags. She's looking at maybe where she came from, which is a pretty poor existence. And this girl, she's on a journey. She's probably texting her friends. I can see, her arms are up. And the more you appreciate the lovely soft colours and the palm trees are great. And I wouldn't go up to gold, but I'll definitely go up into the distinction area. Well, you talked me there. Thank you.
Okay, we have a right reply from Paul. You can comment. Thank you.
I feel like I walked into a Levine store and they put every single gorgeous colour out in front of me to choose from, and it's painted over the back wall just perfectly. Mastery of composition, absolute mastery in terms of the alignment, the positioning, the choice of lighting. And there's so much you can read into the characterization of her being in that place. And there's this lovely, delicate, sophisticated hints of the place. As you can see, a Chinese or Mandarin language in the corner, but just a tiny little element you might not even see that places it somewhere else. And then there's a no ball game sort of element, just popping something else in there. I'll let Steve finish it off. Gold, please.
Thank you, Paul. We can have a right reply from Steve, sitting on 93. Average score now is 87.
Yeah, and no need to convince me because I see exactly what you're seeing. I'm even trying to the way it's printed is just so masterful. There's detail in those deepest, darkest shadows still on a matte paper, and that in itself is actually quite impressive. Coming up to gold, guys.
Thank you, Steve. If you could hold your score on 93 and everyone else rescore, please. Has lifted it from 87 into a gold award at 91 points. Thank you, judges. Next print, please. Can I have a change of judges, please? Alan, if you'd swap with Vicky, please. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. We do want to get home before midnight. Thank you, judges. That scores a majority of 79, an average of 80. We have a challenge from Vicky sitting at 88.
I'm back on the panel. I just loved the, I guess, a contradiction in a sense between the reflection on the right-hand side and all of the beautiful detail and sharpness on the left-hand side. I thought the image was beautifully printed, the lovely tones, great detail on the sharp side, and look, obviously not so much on the right side. I think it's at least a silver, preferably a silver distinction, because it is a unique image, and this is what we're looking for when we go up into the awards range. It is different, so please come with me.
Thank you, Vicky. Sitting slightly lower than 80 is Fiona Hanbury on 79.
I'm comfortable with this image sitting in the professional standard. I think it's well captured, well seen, well printed, perhaps a little over sharpened.
Thank you, Fiona. We could have a right reply from Vicky, please.
Okay, into the awards. Exceeds normal professional practice, high levels of communication, craft and skill. I think even the print quality certainly meets the craft and skill. And as I said, for me it is because it is different, because of the tension between the reflection / blurred side and the sharper side, and beautiful tonality. So yeah, I think it's deserving of a little more. Please come with me.
Thank you, Vicky. We've got a majority score of 79, and Vicky's asking you to go up. She's sitting on 88. Rest of you judges, score, please. Paul, are you entered your score? Thank you, Paul. Just recalculating. We have a majority average score of 80. Silver award. Thank you. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Just reminding you, this is the travel category of the 2019 AIPP Epson Victorian Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards. Average score of 82. With scores ranging from 76 to 85. If we have a comment from Fiona.
Superior visual communication for me. The photographer has deliberately chosen to turn this orientation this way to give us a more impressive and graphical image, for want of a better word. But I do find it to be above board.
Steve, very briefly, you want to comment?
Yeah, within that same line of thought, I feel that sometimes you can be too deliberate, and this is now kind of maybe, been a bit too much to actually force this perspective. Just a thought, though.
Thank you, Steve. We'll accept that average of 82. Silver award. We have a change of judges, please. If we could have... we have Paul, if you could change over with Ian Vanderwald. It's been an hour and 20. Next print, please. Steve, if you could change with who's left. If you gave your scores, please, judges. Sorry, yeah. Paul, it's don't leave it. Okay. We have an average of 80 with a majority of 79. We have a challenge from Ian Vanderwald sitting on 84.
79, seriously, come on. This is beautifully done. I don't think I've ever seen a shot like a hot air balloon done quite this way before. But what I love about this is the subtlety. Okay, it's very, very dark, early wee hours of the morning, but the detail and the clarity in this image is just wonderful. I think we're really doing this photographer a disservice, not bringing it up into the silver range. I suggest you get up and have another look at it.
Okay, who would like to speak at the other end? Fiona, you're on 79.
Yeah, I found this to be a solid professional practice for a travel image. Yes, it is original, and that is why I gave it the 79 and not such like a 77. I just feel that the image would have benefited from crop consideration in on the left.
Paul, briefly, please. You're sitting on
Always brief, Rob.
83.
Yeah, I mean, you could read into all sorts of things that this could be, but the graphic nature of this is so impressive, and I can see beams of light running through. I can see threads of cords. I can see delicacy. I can see grace. I can see strength. And if it is a hot air balloon, what a phenomenally innovative view and cropping of a feature of it that it could take you in so many different directions. Can walk around the rain for those curves. I think it really needs that left-hand side. It would lose something significant if it was that pulled away. And it's a beautiful counterbalance from the top dark left to the bottom bright right.
Right of reply from Ian on 84.
Yeah, I'm quite enjoying the crop. I think to crop the left-hand side would perhaps make it a little bit more ambiguous. Have you guessing what is it? I like the fact that I look at this straight away. I know it's a hot air balloon, and it's been photographed in a way that I've never seen before. I've seen, everyone trying to really get the brightness and everything in there, but you get up and you get in these things, and it's pitch dark in the morning, and it's really, really. I've taken shots of a hot air balloon that I was in high ISOs, but there's no noise in this. It's clean. It's subtle. It's really well presented. I think it's above just professional practice. I'm not asking for a silver distinction here, but I think it's at least, at the very minimum, a silver.
Thank you, Ian. Hold your score at 84. Other judges, please rescore. Sitting in majority 79. And it's now come up 4 points to 83. Silver award. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Reminding you, this is a travel category sponsored by Camera Electronic. Okay, this scores a majority 79. We have scores from 78 to 82. Vicky, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about this print, perhaps some advice for the photographer scoring 82.
Okay.
Can't challenge.
I thought it was a unique perspective, and it was a good time of day because you got the shadows which counterbalanced the metal structure, which was of great interest. It's not a perspective you see every day. I suppose if I was going to offer any advice, just maybe watch some of the highlights. But I felt it was a little bit beyond just professional practice because it was such a unique image. You can't do much about travel. There were just a few little bits of stuff in the water that were a bit distracting, but I guess that was part of the story in terms of the natural element, rocks, whatever they were, against the metal structure. So very interesting.
Thank you, Vicky. That scores a 79. Yes, Steve.
I awarded the photographer a strong silver for the composition in order for the image to perhaps go even higher. Watch your tonal contrast and things like that to really bring that print out.
Thank you, Steve. Next print, please. Jane, thank you. That scores an average of 77. Fiona, you scored a 79. Tell us what you liked about this print.
I thought it was a beautifully seen and captured environment for travel. Perhaps just consideration for the vignette on the left if you're taking it to APA.
Thank you. Accept that average of 77. Next print, please. This print scores an average of 75. Steve, if you like, you scored a 72. Do you want to tell us why, please?
Yeah, perhaps a little bit too obvious in terms of framing. I feel that it's on the way to becoming approaching professional practice. The print quality and the print technical. Sorry, I'm sort of caught me off guard there. But perhaps the technique in the printing and the technique in the post-production could be improved.
Thank you, Steve. Well, sorry, briefly, please, Vicky, it's an average of 75.
Yeah, it'll be very brief. Just be aware that this is a travel category, and I'm wondering what a guy who is fully dressed in all his regalia is doing standing in the middle of the stream, whether this was actually set up, because you're not allowed to do that for travel. Just a thought.
Point well made. Thank you, Vicky. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Okay, the print scores an average of 78. Scores ranging from 74 to 82. We have Steve, you're on 78 on average.
I am enjoying what the photographer's seeing here, and that's obviously that lone person right down the bottom. However, compositionally and visually, it took a while to actually find him or her. So there is far too many distractions that could easily be cropped out and slightly massaged so that our eyes can go directly there.
Thank you, Steve. Next print, please. If we have a swap with Alan and Fiona. Ian, have you scored? A very closely tight bunch of scores, average of 77. Who would like to make a bit of feedback on this particular print? Yes. Thank you, James. You scored a 78.
Yeah, look, I scored at 78.
77, sorry.
Sorry, 77, right. Get that right. Look, the composition's pretty good. You're coming in from the left. You're coming in from the right as well. The shadows are good. You can see a lot of detail in there. But I think what I'd like to see is a bit of a cookie and a bit more direction on where we're going. But it's professional practice for me.
Thank you, James. We'll accept that. Score of 77. Next print, please. Scores, please, judges. Okay, we've got an average of 76. And Alan, please give us the photographer some advice about this print.
It's a great moment. I feel like the composition needs a lot more work just for us to have a real sort of centre of interest. Like there's some cropping from the bottom that could be done to assist this, but again, we have the highlight right in the middle, and we just need to, look at where you're placing your highlights, because that's where your eye is going to go to. So we go straight to the middle, and then we don't go anywhere else. We miss all the other great detail.
Thank you, Alan. We'll accept the score of 76. Next print, please. James, have you? We have an average score of 78. Scores ranging from 76 to 79. Ian, if you'd like to, you've scored at 79.
I think it's a solid professional practice, and that's where it's sort of sitting around the 78 mark. I think we need to have a little bit more narrative or a little bit more happening for it to elevate it up into that award stage. It's a great image, but just lacks that next level.
Thank you, Ian. The next print, please. Reminding you, this is the 2019 AIPP Epson Victorian and Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards in the travel category, sponsored by Camera Electronic. You have your scores, please, judges. We have a challenge because this print is scoring an average of 86, and a challenge from Ian van der Walt on 93.
Okay, I love this image. To me, I'm instantly seeing a homage to Cartier-Bresson, the famous shot of him going around the bend, but it's a modern take on it. I just think it's beautifully handled. The subtlety in the tones through that building is just beautiful. It's high key, but we've got our cyclist in black, so really standing out. There's no question what this photographer wants us to look at, just framed beautifully. If it was cropped differently, I'd go even higher. I would like to see it cropped in from the from the left-hand side. I would have gone even higher, but I just think it's beautiful. Really well done.
And we've all got Steve on 82 at the other end of the scale.
Yeah, I saw what you did see, Ian, I promise. The actual subtlety, though, I don't feel is as subtle as it should be. There's an obvious ripping away of the subtle shadows, which actually make it all look toneless to a certain degree. There seems to be there's not enough tonal range, and the distortion that's actually happening with the camera craft and the lens is proving to be a bit of a distraction. I do agree that the decisive moment is there, and it is reminiscent of Cartier-Bresson. However, I just feel that in post-production, the image perhaps wasn't there. But I'm always listening.
Thank you for your comments, Steve. We've got Vicky also on 82. Can you tell us why?
I just loved it. I would love to have seen it in landscape. The fact that it's in travel for me, it means that it should be a realistic representation of that point in time and place. And I think it's just been processed a little bit too high key for me to meet the definition of travel. But having said that, I do love it, but I will stay on my 82.
James would like to make a brief comment. You're sitting on 87.
Yeah, look, I would definitely go higher here. I love the low tonality of the image. I think it's very soft, very beautiful. And guys, we've got to look at the leading lines. The railing is leading you down to the subject, as well as the building in the background. And composition is beautiful. It's almost like a pastel sketch. And it's pretty daring for the, about to say author, for the photographer to go out there and do this. But I think it's been executed very well, and I'll definitely be going higher. So I'd encourage people to come up too.
Thank you, James. Write a reply for Ian on 93.
Okay, a couple of things. You've picked up on the leading lines, which I was going to get into, but I think we've got the leading lines of the balustrading. We've got the leading lines of the building curved around, and he's perfectly framed in this little opening down the bottom that everything's leading us to. The treatment, I think, other than it being black and white, it could be very, very close to the actual scene. We're looking at a building that's white. If it's flooded with light, all those shadows you're talking about, Steve, are going to be softened. You know, one big softbox coming in the side. So I don't see that as a problem. Remember, this is travel, so there's limits to what they can do to change it. I'm judging it on the fact that it is travel. The photographer's seen this and he's waited for that moment to grab that cyclist going through, and I think he's pulled it off brilliantly, and I think it deserves a gold. Come up, guys.
Okay, Ian, hold your score at 93. Other judges rescore. Current average is 86. And that challenge has brought it up to an average of 92, a gold award. James, have you entered? Yes. Thank you. Average of 76. Scores ranging from 75 to 78. We have Alan. You're on 78. Can you tell us why, please?
Great, it's great sort of environmental portrait, especially of traditional costumes and things. So, I believe, yeah, just some extra sort of warmth could have sort of increased this image to that sort of next level. But apart from that, I think, yeah, and also possibly a bit too much of the water, which is taking us away. So a little bit to give us some context, but probably too much and it's washing us away.
Okay, well, accept that 76. Next print, please. You're changing after this one. You're changing you over with Fiona. He goes off. What's the problem is we don't have it. James. Okay, we have a solid silver average of silver distinction of 86, with scores from 83 to 88. Who would like to have a comment as to why such a strong print? 87, Alan.
So congratulations to the photographer. A very unique travel shot. So it has that sort of, I don't know, train, plane. It's that movement, the abstract nature of the two images on the side, and the fact that we've got a really solid image in the middle is fantastic. I think one of the things, just to tighten it up a little bit, would be just to make sure the lines at the bottom are straight. So they're kind of just rising up a little bit. But I feel like that would also just help it bring up to that solid next level.
Thank you, Alan. Steve?
Just a little bit confused as to why perhaps the photographer has desaturated the image. I think that could have been to the detriment.
Thank you. So that's scores 86, silver with distinction. Congratulations. Next print, please. What do you want to do? Can you give one more? Oh, sorry. Ian, can you swap with Alan? Can we put the print? Sorry, judges, that print has. If you have the next print, please. Judges, we're right to go. Today we're judging the 2019 AIPP Epson Victorian Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards in the travel category, sponsored by Camera Electronic. Travel photography involves landscape, people, culture, customs and history. Entries should communicate some aspect of travel, but judges are asked to interpret this broadly. Scores, please, judges. Scores an average of 81, ranging from 77 to 84. So Steve will score at 78. And tell us why you're below the average, please, Steve.
Yeah, it's with pleasure. No. It is an actual epic image in terms of the vastness of it and what the photographer has actually captured. What I found to be the most distracting on this image is the inconsistency of the black points when printing. So that there are some really deep velvet rich blacks, and in the next 10 metres or so of the literal scene, that jumps back up to kind of like a mid-tone and things like that. And that inconsistency seems to be perhaps a little bit too distracting.
Thank you, Steve. I accept that silver award with a score of 81. Next print, please. Alan back on. We'll get David. Can we have scores, please, judges? Blank screen, please. Just reminding you, the travel category, we've got just a handful of prints to complete. It's sponsored by Camera Electronic. Entries in this category may be commissioned or self-commissioned. This category is for single capture images and intended to reward technical and creative excellence in photographing and presenting an authentic representation of a scene without the benefit of creative compositing techniques. I remind you the awards dinner is on Thursday the 20th. 6:30 p.m. at Harbour Kitchen in Docklands. The problem was there was so many conflicts on one of the prints. We wanted to put that print into the next room. In the process of attempting that, it crashed it. Well, no, getting that one print into the next room.